Have you ever imagined a world without electricity? No lights, no computers, no smartphones, no electric cars. The world you know today would be completely different. My name is Nikola Tesla. Many people call me the man who electrified the world. But I was not born a genius. I was simply a curious boy who asked one question over and over again. Why? I was born on the 10th of July, 1856 in the small village of Smiljan, which was then part of the Austrian Empire and is now in modern-day Croatia. On the night I was born, a violent thunderstorm filled the sky. Lightning flashed across the darkness. The wind shook our home. The midwife looked at the storm and whispered, "This child will be a child of darkness." My mother smiled and replied, "No, he will be a child of light." Neither of them knew how meaningful those words would become. My father, Smiljan Tesla, was a Serbian Orthodox priest. He hoped that one day I would follow in his footsteps and become a priest. My mother, Nikola Tesla, had never attended school, yet she possessed an extraordinary talent. She could build household tools and machines entirely from memory. She invented useful devices to make everyday work easier. Watching her create things with her hands fascinated me. I believe my love for invention began with her. She taught me that every problem has a solution. You simply have to find it. As a child, I was different from other boys. I had an incredible memory. I could remember entire books after reading them only once. Instead of writing things down, I stored them inside my mind. Sometimes I could even imagine complete machines rotating before my eyes. I didn't need paper. I didn't need drawings. I could build inventions inside my imagination and test them there before creating them in real life. At the time, people thought I was strange, but I simply saw the world differently. I loved nature. I spent hours watching rivers flow. I observed birds flying through the sky. I studied the movement of water wheels. Everything around me seemed to hide a secret waiting to be discovered. One day, while playing near a stream, I watched the water turn a small wooden wheel. I stood there for a long time. Then I asked myself, if moving water can create motion, could nature itself provide endless power? That simple question stayed with me for years. One evening, I gently stroked our family cat. Suddenly, tiny blue sparks appeared in its fur. I was amazed. I asked my father, "What is this mysterious light?" He smiled and said, "It is electricity." Electricity. The word echoed in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was this invisible force? Could it be controlled? Could it change the world? Without realizing it, that moment became the beginning of my life's greatest obsession. As I grew older, my curiosity only became stronger. While other children played games, I imagined impossible machines. I dreamed of using waterfalls to produce electricity. I dreamed of lighting entire cities. I dreamed of giving power to every home on Earth. Most people laughed at such dreams, but I never stopped believing. Because every great invention begins as an impossible idea. I had no idea that one day I would leave my home, cross oceans, challenge the greatest inventors of my time, and forever change the future of humanity. My journey had only just begun. After my childhood, one thing had become clear. I wasn't interested in an ordinary life. While other boys dreamed of becoming soldiers or merchants, I dreamed of discovering the hidden forces of nature. Every day, my curiosity grew stronger. I wanted to understand electricity. I wanted to understand energy. I wanted to understand the universe itself. As I entered high school in Karlovac, my teachers quickly noticed that I was different. Mathematics fascinated me. I could solve difficult calculations entirely in my head. Many teachers believed I was cheating because I finished my work so quickly. But I wasn't cheating. The answers simply appeared in my mind. Numbers spoke to me in a way words never could. I could visualize complex machines before they were ever built. It was as if my imagination had become my laboratory. One of my teachers demonstrated an electrical machine called the Gram dynamo. As I watched the machine produce electricity, I became completely absorbed. Most students simply admired it. I couldn't stop asking questions. Why did it work? Could it work better? Could electricity be transmitted more efficiently? That single lesson changed my life. I left the classroom knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I would dedicate my life to electricity. When I finished school, my father wanted me to become a priest. He believed it was a noble calling, but my heart belonged to science. For the first time in my life, our dreams were different. I respected my father deeply, yet I couldn't ignore the voice inside me. I wanted to become an engineer. Before we could resolve our disagreement, life took an unexpected turn. At the age of 17, I became seriously ill with cholera. For months, I lay in bed. The disease grew worse every day. Doctors visited repeatedly. Some quietly told my family there was little hope. Many believed I would not survive. As I lay there, too weak to move, I wondered if my dreams would end before they had even begun. One evening, my father sat beside my bed. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Then he made me a promise. "Nikola, if you recover, I will send you to the finest engineering school in Europe." Those words gave me something I desperately needed. Hope. I fought harder than ever before. Slowly, my strength returned. Against all expectations, I survived. That promise changed my future forever. In 1875, I enrolled at the Austrian Polytechnic School in Graz. I threw myself into my studies. I attended every lecture. I studied from early morning until late at night. Sometimes I worked for nearly 20 hours a day. My professors were amazed. One even wrote to my father, saying, "Your son is a star of the first rank." I wasn't studying for fame. I wasn't studying for money. I was studying because every new discovery filled me with excitement. The more I learned, the more I realized how much remained unknown. During one class, we studied direct current electrical machines. As I watched the motors operate, a thought entered my mind. Why must electricity always flow in only one direction? Everyone believed direct current was the future, but I wasn't convinced. Deep inside, I believed there had to be a better way, a system that was safer, more powerful, and capable of delivering electricity across great distances. That single idea would one day challenge the greatest inventor in America and change the world forever. But before that could happen, I would have to leave Europe behind. My greatest journey was about to begin. By the time I finished my studies, I carried a mind full of ideas. I believed electricity could change the future of humanity. But dreams alone were not enough. I needed an opportunity, and I needed someone willing to believe in me. After leaving university, my life became difficult. I worked as a draftsman for a short time. Money was scarce. There were days when I wondered if my dreams would ever become reality. Eventually, I found work in Budapest, Hungary, at a telegraph company. It was there that one of the greatest ideas of my life was born. One afternoon, while walking through a park with my close friend Anatal Sigeti, we were discussing poetry. As I recited lines from Goethe's Faust, inspiration struck me like lightning. Suddenly, I stopped walking. I picked up a stick and began drawing circles in the sand. "I've found it!" I shouted. "I've solved the problem." My friend looked at me in confusion. I had just imagined a completely new type of electric motor, one powered by alternating current, or AC. Unlike the existing direct current machines, my design could generate rotating magnetic fields without brushes or commutators. At that moment, the motor existed only in my mind, but I could see every detail as clearly as if it had already been built. Soon afterward, I moved to Paris and joined the Continental Edison Company. The company built and repaired electrical equipment across Europe. Every day, I worked with generators and electrical systems. My supervisors noticed my ability to solve problems others could not. Whenever a difficult machine failed, they sent me. I enjoyed every challenge. Yet something troubled me. Everywhere I looked, I saw the limitations of direct current. It worked over short distances, but it wasted enormous amounts of energy. I knew there was a better system. No one wanted to listen. One day, my manager approached me with an unexpected proposal. "There's a man in America," he said. "His name is Thomas Edison. He needs talented engineers." I had admired Edison's achievements. The opportunity felt unbelievable. America was becoming the center of innovation. If I wanted to change the world, that was where I needed to go. Before I left, one of my employers handed me a letter of recommendation addressed to Edison. It contained a remarkable sentence. I know two great men. One is you. The other is this young man. Those words gave me confidence, but the journey ahead would test me in ways I could never imagine. In 1884, I boarded a ship bound for New York. During the voyage, disaster struck. Some of my luggage was stolen. My money was lost. Many of my belongings disappeared. When I finally reached America, I owned almost nothing. Just a few clothes, some calculations, a head filled with inventions, and that precious letter of recommendation. As I stood in New York Harbor, staring at the enormous city before me, I whispered to myself, this is where my future begins. I had crossed an ocean with nothing but an idea. I believed that idea would one day light the entire world. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to meet the man who would become my greatest rival, Thomas Edison, and our battle would become one of the most famous rivalries in the history of science. When I arrived in New York in 1884, I had almost nothing. A few coins in my pocket, a letter of recommendation, and a dream that refused to die. The city was unlike anything I had ever seen. Tall buildings, crowded streets, endless noise. At every corner, I saw opportunity, but I also knew that if I failed here, I might lose everything. The very next day, I walked into the office of Thomas Edison. To the world, Edison was already a legend. He had invented the phonograph. He had improved the electric light bulb. His companies were spreading electricity across America. Meeting him felt like meeting the future itself. I handed him my letter of recommendation. He read it carefully. Then he smiled. He offered me a job immediately. At last, my dream had begun. I worked long hours, sometimes 18, sometimes 20 hours a day. The machines Edison used were powered by direct current, or DC. Whenever one of his generators failed, I repaired it. Whenever there was a difficult problem, I found a solution. Soon, people began noticing my work. Edison himself trusted me with some of his most challenging projects. One day, he gave me an enormous task. He asked me to redesign and improve many of his DC generators. It was weeks of exhausting work. Day and night, I barely slept. But eventually, I completed the project. The machines became more efficient. The company benefited greatly. When I finished, I reminded Edison of something he had once said. He had promised me a large reward if I succeeded. Some accounts described the amount as $50,000, an enormous fortune at the time. I believed I had earned it. Edison laughed and said, "Tesla, you don't understand American humor." I stood there in silence. Months of relentless work, reduced to a joke. Whether this conversation happened exactly as later remembered has been debated by historians. But what is certain is this. I felt deeply disappointed, not because of the money alone, but because I believed my work had not been valued. Soon after, I resigned. I walked out of Edison's company with no job, no income, and no clear plan. Many people thought I had made a terrible mistake, but I could not continue working on a system I believed was flawed. Deep inside, I knew the future belonged to alternating current, not direct current. The world simply didn't know it yet. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. To survive, I accepted work digging ditches for electrical cables. Imagine that. The man who dreamed of changing the future of electricity, now earning just enough to buy food by digging holes in the ground. People passed me every day without knowing who I was. Some laughed, some ignored me. But while my hands dug through the earth, my mind was still building machines. I never stopped believing. Every evening, after work, I imagined the AC motor turning perfectly inside my mind. I knew that if someone would only give me one chance, I could change the world. That chance arrived when I met a group of investors who believed in my ideas. For the first time, someone was willing to take a risk on me. And together, we were about to start a revolution that would become known as the War of Currents. When I left Thomas Edison's company, many people believed my career was over. I had no money, no laboratory, no powerful company standing behind me. But I still had something far more valuable. An idea. I believed that alternating current, or AC, could carry electricity over long distances more efficiently than direct current. Almost no one believed me, but I refused to give up. In 1887, I finally found investors who helped me establish the Tesla Electric Company. For the first time, I had my own laboratory. Day and night, I worked on my inventions. Soon, I built the machine I had imagined years earlier while walking through a park in Budapest. The AC induction motor. When I switched it on, the motor ran exactly as I had seen it in my mind. Years of imagination had become reality. I knew this invention could change the world. In 1888, I presented my work to the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. Scientists and engineers listened carefully as I explained the advantages of AC electricity. Among the audience was a man who would change my life, George Westinghouse. He immediately understood the potential of my inventions. After the presentation, he approached me. He said, "Mr. Tesla, together we can bring electricity to the world." Those words marked the beginning of one of the greatest partnerships in history. Westinghouse purchased the rights to many of my AC patents and hired me to help develop the system. For the first time, my dream had powerful support. But our success created a powerful enemy. Thomas Edison. He believed direct current was the future. His companies had invested enormous amounts of money in DC systems. If AC succeeded, those investments could lose much of their value. A fierce competition began. Newspapers called it the War of Currents. It was not fought with soldiers or weapons. It was fought with ideas, with inventions, and with public opinion. To convince people that AC was dangerous, Edison supporters organized public demonstrations. Animals were electrocuted using alternating current to frighten the public. They even supported the use of AC in the first electric chair, hoping people would associate my system with death. When I heard about these demonstrations, I was deeply saddened. Electricity was meant to improve human life, not to spread fear. I chose not to answer with anger. Instead, I answered with science. At public lectures, I passed high-voltage AC electricity through my own body. Bright lamps glowed in my hands without wires. The audience watched in amazement. I showed them that when properly designed and controlled, alternating current could be used safely. People began to understand. Fear slowly gave way to curiosity, and curiosity became trust. Then came the opportunity that would decide everything. The organizers of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago needed a company to light the entire fair. Millions of visitors were expected. The whole world would be watching. Both Edison's system and Westinghouse AC system competed for the contract. After careful consideration, Westinghouse won. That victory changed history. Soon, thousands of electric lights illuminated the exhibition. Visitors stood in awe. Many had never seen such a dazzling display of electricity. That night, the world realized something important. The future belonged to alternating current. Our victory was complete, but an even greater challenge was waiting for me. One of the most powerful waterfalls on Earth, Niagara Falls. I dreamed of turning its immense force into electricity for millions of people. If we succeeded, humanity would enter a new age. After years of struggle, the world finally began to believe in my dream. The success of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition proved that alternating current was not only possible, it was the future. For the first time, millions of people saw cities illuminated by AC electricity. But I wasn't satisfied. I had a much bigger dream. I wanted to harness one of nature's greatest forces, Niagara Falls. For centuries, people had admired the breathtaking waterfalls. Some saw beauty, others saw power. When I looked at Niagara Falls, I saw electricity waiting to be released. As a child, I had imagined using waterfalls to power the world. Now, that childhood dream stood before me. The Niagara Falls Power Company selected George Westinghouse and me to build the world's first large-scale hydroelectric power station using my AC system. It was one of the greatest engineering challenges ever attempted. Many experts believed it could never be done. I believed otherwise. Day after day, engineers worked tirelessly. Massive generators were installed. Miles of electrical cables were laid. Every bolt, every wire, every machine brought us one step closer to history. Then, in 1895, the generators came to life. The sound of the turbines echoed through the station. The machines began to spin. Electricity surged through the system. The impossible had become reality. A year later, power from Niagara Falls reached the city of Buffalo, New York, more than 20 miles away. Homes lit up. Factories came alive. Entire communities were transformed. The dream I had carried since childhood had finally become real. Nature itself was now lighting the world. News of our success spread across the globe. Scientists praised the achievement. Governments took notice. Countries began adopting alternating current for their own electrical systems. One by one, cities replaced outdated DC networks with AC. The system that many had once mocked was becoming the global standard. Every time I saw electric lights glowing across a city skyline, I felt grateful, not because people knew my name, but because the world had become a little brighter. With success came recognition. Universities invited me to speak. Scientific societies honored my work. People began calling me one of the greatest inventors of the age. But fame never interested me. Money never inspired me. I wasn't trying to become rich. I wanted to discover ideas that could improve the lives of everyone. Every invention led to another question. Every answer revealed another mystery. The universe still had countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. One evening, while watching lightning flash across the sky, a new idea entered my mind. What if electricity didn't need wires at all? What if power could travel invisibly through the air? Imagine lighting homes, running factories, powering entire cities, without a single cable. Most people called the idea impossible. Some even laughed. But I had learned something long ago. The impossible is often just an idea waiting for someone brave enough to prove it. So I began building a new laboratory in Colorado Springs. There, I planned to perform experiments unlike anything the world had ever seen. I wasn't just trying to improve electricity anymore. I wanted to change how humanity received it forever. My greatest invention was still ahead. By the late 1890s, many people believed I had already achieved enough. The world was using alternating current. Cities were glowing with electric light. Factories were becoming more powerful than ever before. Most inventors would have been satisfied. But not me. I believed electricity's greatest future had not yet arrived. I dreamed of a world without wires. A world where energy and information could travel through the air itself. People laughed when they heard my ideas. But I had learned long ago that today's impossible dream often becomes tomorrow's reality. In 1899, I moved my laboratory to Colorado Springs. The location was perfect. The wide-open land and frequent thunderstorms allowed me to conduct experiments on a scale I had never attempted before. There, I built one of the largest Tesla coils ever created. When I switched it on, giant bolts of artificial lightning burst into the sky. Some sparks stretched for more than 30 meters, 100 feet. The sound echoed for miles. People living nearby thought the end of the world had arrived. During one experiment, the electrical discharge was so powerful that it overloaded the local power station, causing a blackout. It was never my intention to interrupt the town's electricity. I simply wanted to understand nature's immense power. Inside my laboratory, I watched electricity behave in ways few people had ever seen. Lamps glowed without being connected to wires. Energy seemed to leap through the air. To many, it looked like magic. To me, it was science. Each successful experiment strengthened my belief that one day humanity could transmit electricity wirelessly across great distances. Around this time, I also demonstrated another invention that amazed the public. A small boat. There was nothing unusual about its appearance. But when people gathered to watch, I controlled it from a distance. Without touching it, the boat obeyed every command. It turned. It stopped. It moved forward and backward. The audience stood in complete silence. Some believed there was a hidden person inside the boat. Others whispered that I was using magic. I smiled and explained that it was neither. It was radio control, the use of invisible radio waves to control a machine remotely. Today, technologies like drones, remote-controlled vehicles, and wireless communication owe much to those early experiments. At the time, however, few understood their significance. My greatest dream was still ahead. I imagined a single system that could send both information and electrical power around the world. To make that dream a reality, I needed a much larger laboratory, a place unlike anything ever built. With financial support from the wealthy banker J.P. Morgan, I began constructing the Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, New York. It was an enormous structure. Many people had no idea what I was building. Some believed it was a giant radio tower. Others thought it was an observatory. Only I knew its true purpose. I hoped it would become the world's first global wireless communication and power station. I believed people across the planet would one day receive messages, and perhaps even electricity, without wires. It was the most ambitious project of my life. Every day, I looked at the rising tower with hope. I imagined a future where knowledge could travel instantly across continents, where electricity reached even the poorest villages, where distance no longer separated humanity. It was a beautiful dream, but dreams require more than imagination. They require money, and soon, the money began to disappear. The project slowed. Workers stopped coming. My greatest vision was standing unfinished against the sky. I had no idea that the tower I believed would change the world would also become the greatest heartbreak of my life. When I began building the Wardenclyffe Tower, I truly believed it would change the future of humanity. This was more than a tower. It was my dream. I imagined a world where people could send messages across continents instantly. A world where electricity could travel without wires. A world where even the poorest villages could receive power. I believed technology should serve everyone, not just those who could afford it. Every morning, I looked at the rising tower with hope. I could already see the future in my mind. At first, construction moved quickly. Workers built the massive wooden structure. Engineers installed equipment. Every day brought us closer to success. But great dreams often come with great costs. The project required far more money than anyone had expected. Soon, the funds began to run low. I returned to J.P. Morgan, hoping he would continue supporting the project. I explained my vision once again. A global wireless system, instant communication, perhaps even wireless transmission of electrical power. He listened carefully. Then he asked a simple question. If people receive electricity for free, where will the profit come from? I had no answer that satisfied a businessman. My dream was to improve humanity. His concern was whether the investment would earn a return. Without additional funding, the project came to a halt. At the same time, another inventor was changing the world. Guglielmo Marconi successfully demonstrated long-distance wireless telegraphy using radio technology. Many newspapers celebrated him as the inventor of radio. I was disappointed. Some of the ideas behind radio communication relied on patents and concepts I had developed years earlier. I believed history would one day recognize my contributions. But in that moment, the world looked elsewhere. Recognition slipped through my fingers. As the months passed, my financial problems became worse. Bills piled up. Creditors demanded payment. I borrowed money wherever I could. Still, it wasn't enough. Construction at Wardenclyffe stopped completely. The unfinished tower stood silently against the sky. Every time I looked at it, I saw not failure, but a dream waiting for another chance. Unfortunately, that chance never came. In 1917, the tower was demolished. Watching it disappear was one of the most painful moments of my life. Years of hope, years of work, reduced to rubble. Many people believed I had reached the end of my career. Investors no longer trusted my ambitious ideas. The newspapers that once praised me now called me a dreamer. Some even called me a failure. But I refused to believe that my life's value depended on money or public opinion. Every great discovery begins with someone willing to dream beyond what others think is possible. Even though the world had turned away from me, I could not stop inventing. My mind was always searching for the next idea. As I grew older, I lived in hotels instead of grand laboratories. The wealth I had once earned was gone. Many of my patents had expired. Others had made fortunes from technologies that grew out of ideas I had pioneered. I held no bitterness. I only wished I had been able to finish what I had started. Still, one thing remained unchanged. My imagination. No matter how difficult life became, I continued to fill notebooks with new inventions. The world may have forgotten my name, but I had not forgotten my purpose. My greatest struggle was no longer against rival inventors. It was against time itself. As the years passed, the world changed rapidly. New inventions appeared almost every year. Radio stations were broadcasting across nations. Cities glowed with electric lights. Factories ran on alternating current. Everywhere I looked, I saw ideas that had once existed only in my imagination. Yet very few people remembered when many of those ideas had begun. My name slowly faded from public memory. I continued living in New York City, not in a grand mansion, but in hotel rooms. The hotel became my home, my laboratory, my office. Every morning I woke with another invention in my mind. I filled notebooks with sketches and calculations. Some people believed I had stopped inventing. They were wrong. I never stopped. The world had simply stopped listening. Money became a constant problem. Many of my patents had expired. I earned little income. Hotel bills continued to grow. Several times, I was forced to move because I could no longer pay my expenses. The newspapers often wrote about my financial struggles. Some people pitied me. Others laughed. But I had learned long ago that success and failure are often temporary. Only curiosity lasts forever. One thing brought me great peace. The pigeons of New York. Every afternoon, I walked through parks feeding them. People often saw me surrounded by hundreds of birds. To many, it seemed strange. But those pigeons expected nothing from me. They didn't care whether I was famous or forgotten. They simply trusted me. One white pigeon became especially dear to me. I once said that I love that bird as deeply as one person can love another living creature. When she flew to my window, I felt less alone. Even in old age, my imagination never rested. I spoke about new ideas. Wireless communication across the globe. Advanced aircraft. Machines controlled remotely. Directed energy concepts that I believe could prevent wars by making nations think twice before attacking each other. Some newspapers called these ideas impossible. Others called them fantasies. History would later show that many technologies once dismissed as impossible eventually became reality. Then, something unexpected happened. Young engineers and scientists began rediscovering my work. They realized how important alternating current had become. They studied my patents. They admired my experiments. Slowly, respect began to return. In 1917, I received the Edison Medal, one of the highest honors in electrical engineering. It was an ironic moment, an award named after the man who had once been my greatest rival. I accepted it with gratitude, not because I had forgotten the past, but because science is greater than personal rivalry. As I approached the end of my life, I spent many evenings looking out over the lights of New York City. Every glowing window reminded me of something. Electricity had become part of everyday life. Children could study after sunset. Hospitals could save more lives. Factories could produce more goods. Entire cities had been transformed. My dream had reached millions of people, even if they didn't know my name. And that was enough. Still, I felt that my final chapter had not yet been written. Soon, my journey on Earth would come to an end. But the story of my inventions was only beginning. By the 1940s, I was an old man. My hair had turned white. My body had grown weak. But my mind never stopped working. Every morning, I woke with new ideas. Some people believed I had reached the end of my journey. I believed I was still only a student of the universe. There was always another mystery waiting to be solved. I continued living in the New Yorker Hotel in New York City. It wasn't a laboratory filled with machines. It was a quiet room with stacks of papers, notebooks, and calculations. Whenever inspiration came, I wrote everything down. Some ideas remained unfinished. Others were far ahead of their time. Many people thought I had become eccentric. Perhaps they were right. But every inventor sees the world differently. Even in my old age, I spoke about bold new ideas. I imagined aircraft that could fly without propellers, machines controlled from great distances, global wireless communication, and powerful technologies that, I hoped, could prevent wars by making attacks too dangerous to attempt. Many newspapers called these ideas impossible. Some mocked me, but I had heard those same words throughout my life. I had learned never to measure an idea by today's limits. The pigeons continued to visit me every day. They became my quiet companions. People often smiled when they saw me feeding them in the parks of New York. One beautiful white pigeon was especially dear to me. Whenever she flew to my window, I felt a sense of peace. Years later, I said that when she died, a light had gone out of my life. Some people laughed at my affection for birds, but kindness should never be limited to human beings alone. Although I had little money, I never regretted dedicating my life to invention. Wealth was never my goal. If I had wanted riches, I would have made different choices. Instead, I chose discovery. I chose curiosity. I chose the hope that knowledge could improve humanity. Looking back, I had no regrets about following that path. As I looked out across the brightly lit skyline of New York, I often smiled. Every glowing street, every illuminated building, every electric motor, every power station, they reminded me that my dream had become part of everyday life. People switched on a light without thinking about how electricity reached their homes. That was enough for me. An inventor does not need applause. An inventor needs to know that the invention made the world better. I knew my journey was nearing its end. I was no longer afraid of death. I had spent my life chasing ideas that once seemed impossible. Some had failed. Many had succeeded. All had taught me something. One quiet winter morning, I closed my eyes for the last time. But my story did not end there. After my death, questions would arise. My papers would disappear into government hands, and people around the world would wonder, what secrets had Nikola Tesla left behind? By January 1943, I was 86 years old. My body had become weak, but my mind still wandered through ideas that no one else could see. Every night, I looked out from my room at the New Yorker hotel. The city below glowed with electricity. Millions of lights illuminated the streets. Every light reminded me of the dream I had carried since I was a young boy. The dream had become reality. On the evening of the 7th of January, 1943, I spent my final hours quietly in my hotel room. I had instructed the hotel staff not to disturb me. The next day, when no one had heard from me, they entered my room. I had passed away peacefully in my sleep. There were no crowds, no family beside me, no grand laboratory, only silence. I had entered this world during a lightning storm, and I left it in quiet darkness. News of my death spread quickly. Newspapers around the world reported that one of history's greatest inventors was gone. Scientists paid tribute. Engineers honored my achievements. People began to remember the man whose ideas had helped electrify the modern world. Even those who had once doubted me now recognized my extraordinary contributions. Sometimes, history needs time before it fully understands a person. Soon after my death, officials from the U.S. Office of Alien Property Custodian took possession of my papers, notebooks, and personal belongings. Because I was born in the Austrian Empire and was not a U.S. citizen, the government reviewed my documents during World War II. This decision later gave rise to many stories and mysteries. Some people claimed I had discovered secret weapons. Others believed I had invented extraordinary technologies hidden from the world. The truth is more complicated. Many of those stories have never been supported by reliable historical evidence. What is certain is that I left behind thousands of pages of scientific notes, sketches, and ideas, some completed, many unfinished. Years later, many of my personal papers were transferred to what is now the Nikola Tesla Museum, where they continue to be studied by historians and researchers. Even after my death, people remain fascinated by my work, not because I claim to know every answer, but because I was never afraid to ask impossible questions. As I look back on my life, I realized something. I had experienced success. I had experienced failure. I had known admiration. I had known loneliness. But through every triumph and every hardship, one thing never changed. My curiosity. It was curiosity that led me from a small village to the greatest laboratories in the world. It was curiosity that gave humanity cleaner, more efficient electrical power. And it was curiosity that kept me dreaming until my final breath. Yet my greatest achievement was not a single invention. It was the future that my ideas helped create. That future belongs to you. If you have walked beside me from the beginning of my story, then you know one important truth. I was never chasing fame. I was never chasing wealth. I was chasing ideas. Ideas that I believe could improve the lives of every human being. Even when people laughed at me, even when I lost my money, even when I worked alone, I never stopped believing that knowledge could change the world. People often call me the man who invented the 20th century. I never gave myself that title. I simply followed my curiosity wherever it led me. Sometimes it led to success. Sometimes it led to failure. But every experiment taught me something new. To me, failure was never the opposite of success. It was simply another lesson. Today, look around you. When you switch on a light, when an electric motor powers a machine, when electricity travels hundreds of kilometers to reach your home, you are seeing the impact of ideas that I helped bring into the world. Alternating current became the foundation of modern electrical power systems. My work on high-frequency electricity, transformers, induction motors, and wireless technology influenced generations of engineers. Many inventions that seemed impossible in my lifetime became reality decades later. That is the true reward of an inventor, to plant seeds whose fruits may be enjoyed by future generations. There was a time when many of my contributions were forgotten. Others received recognition while my name faded into history. But truth has a way of finding its place. As the years passed, scientists and historians looked again at my work. They realized how much of the modern world had been built upon ideas I had developed. Today, schools teach my discoveries. Museums preserve my work. Books tell my story. Engineers continue to study my inventions. Not because I wanted to be remembered, but because ideas that help humanity never truly disappear. One of the greatest honors came many years after my lifetime. The international unit used to measure magnetic flux density was named the Tesla T in my honor. Knowing that my name became part of science itself is a reminder that curiosity can outlive the person who first followed it. If I could leave you with one message, it would be this. Never stop asking questions. The world changes because someone refuses to accept that impossible is the final answer. Every great invention begins with curiosity. Every discovery begins with a dream. Do not be afraid if others doubt you. Do not be afraid if your path is different. The future has always belonged to those who dared to imagine it first. When I was born, lightning filled the sky. Many believed it was only a storm. I chose to see it as a sign of possibility. Throughout my life, I tried to transform the power of nature into something that could serve humanity. If my story inspires you, do not remember me only as the inventor of alternating current. Remember me as a man who believed that knowledge should benefit everyone. Remember me as someone who never stopped dreaming. Because every light that shines, every motor that turns, every city that glows at night, carries a small part of that dream. My name is Nikola Tesla. This was my story. And perhaps, the next great idea belongs to you.